do you see how you were being trained to learn that you were helpless? You're like, okay, school is what I need. Basically, you were programmed that, like, if you don't like geometry and algebra and American history and English and all of these other things that we were forced to do that we pretty much don't use now at all. Of course you use English, probably, right? But you probably don't need to have read the Iliad or the Odyssey or, I don't know, the Scarlet Letter. Some of that stuff is great, yes, but a lot of it, too much emphasis was placed on that when we should have been being taught to not be helpless, to do things like understanding tax laws in this country, understanding credit, personal credit, and finance, and how those things affect you every single day of your life. All right? I don't use the Iliad and the Odyssey and, I don't know, the volume of a cone in geometry or stuff like that on an everyday basis. In fact, I don't even use those things once a year or once every 5 years or 10 years, or probably actually never in my life, and probably you too, have never used those things outside of a classroom setting. But I use my credit pretty much every single day, or my personal finance, or understanding, hey, what are tax brackets? What are the tax breaks of having a small business? Alright, welcome back everyone to another video. Today we are covering the topic of breaking the family curse, the generational curse. And what is the family curse? It is learned helplessness. Alright, so everybody, pretty much bar none, has some degree of learned helplessness. Now, it is in varying degrees between people and with different subjects in their life. So what is learned helplessness? So the psychologist Martin Seligman, who is known as the founder probably of positive psychology, if not one of the, definitely credited as one of the founders of positive psychology, and how positivity and optimism and things of that nature craft our view of the world and our experience of life and that sort of thing. Well, he also did plenty of research in this idea of learned helplessness. And what learned helplessness is basically is when you are conditioned through life, whether someone meant to do this to you or not, but when you are conditioned in life to feel like, okay, this is not something that I have control of, whatever the situation is. This isn't something I can change. This isn't something I can have any impact on. Let's talk about a couple of ones that we can latch onto here. One is like money. A lot of people, and I'm not saying any of these beliefs are right or wrong or good or bad or fair or not or any of that. This is just a for instance. A lot of people have at least heard of the adage, money is the root of all evil. Or maybe you have heard from certain people growing up that if you have money, for example, or are rich or have a lot of resources or whatever the case is, that you came about those things in some unscrupulous way or in some, like you were screwing other people over or whatever the case is. You've probably heard that. Whether or not you believe in it, you've definitely probably heard that, especially young. And that idea right there promotes another idea that, oh, okay, so in order to have resources, money, investments, a comfortable life, whatever the case is that brings you, you have to be some sort of a person that goes out and, like I said, screws people over, you steal, you lie, you cheat. You have to be that kind of person in order to get it. And then what does that do? It makes you think that, okay, well, I don't want to be that kind of person because nobody wants to be the kind of person. Nobody gets up in the morning and stretches and like, whoo, time to go screw everybody over. Nobody does that. All right? So then we think that, okay, so I don't want to do that. Therefore, I don't want to be a person that is rich or a person who is well off, even, or has a little more than their basic needs. And there are different degrees of intensity by which people believe that. Sure, they're like, okay, anybody who makes more than this amount is one of those terrible people, or whatever it is, or this amount, or this amount, or this amount, or whatever the case is, right? The intensity isn't necessarily the issue, it's the belief. And here's what the belief does. When you adopt that belief and you hear it over and over, and then you go through life and you try a few things, and it seems hard because success and excellence takes a while. So making some money isn't going to happen on your first try, probably. And then you get a couple of those times where you try and fail, or you might not fail, but you might get a little bit less than you were expecting. Like, you progress less towards your goal than you were expecting, and that reinforces that belief. All right? You start to learn to be helpless. You're like, hey, this is right, man. Only, I don't know, terrible people or liars, cheaters, and stealers are the people that get ahead. And hey, I'm just not one of those people. I'm just never gonna get ahead. And then that belief, you adopt it, and it becomes more and more ingrained. And even when a situation comes about to where you can get out of it, you can't. You could get out of it had you not had that adopted belief, but you can't because you have learned to be helpless. Your mind is playing a script on autopilot, saying, hey, remember what we said about this. Anything, any money or whatever that comes to you, if it's more than what your needs are, or whatever the definition is for you or for whoever is trying to instill this kind of thinking in you, if it's more than that, then what? Then no, that's not for me. I can't do it. Even if the opportunity comes, it's a real opportunity. It's not a scam or anything like that. It's like, hey, this is an emerging industry, or maybe just a new kind of job or whatever, and you would be great for it, and you really would. It might not happen overnight, but you really would. But then you think like, oh, but those things, remember, that's not me. That's those liars, cheaters, stealers, whatever kind of people. Okay, let's divert a little bit from money, because that's one kind of issue. This learned helplessness can happen with anything. All right, let's talk about some other things that you might not even consider that you have learned to be helpless, or you at least know people that have. A lot of people will get out of the learned helplessness with some effort, and then they look back and they're like, oh wow, I can't believe how easy it was to influence me, how impressionable I was. Let's take a big one. The school system. Okay? And I'm not here to debate whether or not the school system does this on purpose, but in a way, at least in this country, the school system works off of scarcity. As in, there's only so many good jobs out there. You're not going to get any of them if you don't have straight A's or be on the AB honor roll or whatever your school system is telling you. And there is a correctness in some of that. You don't want to be like a D student and you're trying to do something significant in some field. No, you want to study and get good grades, yes. The issue is the learned helplessness comes from, hey, good life over here. You're here going through school. The only way to cross that chasm, so to speak, is through us, through school. That's it. It's only if we tell you you can have the good life by having education, having good grades, having referrals or recommendations from teachers or professors so you can get into programs later that you want to. Do you see how you are being trained to learn that you are helpless? You're like, okay, school is what I need. Now, I'm not dogging education here. That's a separate topic. I'm just saying, as an example, we all went to school. You know what I'm talking about. Basically, you were programmed that, like, if you don't like geometry and algebra and, I don't know, American history and English and all of these other things that we were forced to do that we pretty much don't use now at all. Of course, you use English, probably, right? But you probably don't need to have read the Iliad or the Odyssey or, I don't know, the Scarlet Letter. Some of that stuff is great, yes, but a lot of it, too much emphasis was placed on that when we should have been being taught to not be helpless, to do things like understanding tax laws in this country, understanding things like credit, personal credit, and finance, and how those things affect you every single day of your life. All right, I don't use the Iliad and the Odyssey and, I don't know, the volume of a cone in geometry or stuff like that on an everyday basis. In fact, I don't even use those things once a year or once every 5 years or 10 years, or probably actually never in my life, and probably you too, have never used those things outside of a classroom setting. But I use my credit pretty much every single day, or my personal finance, or understanding, hey, what are tax brackets? What are the tax breaks of having a small business? And things of that nature. What does it mean to continue your education? Like, you see all these books behind me. A lot of people hate reading because we were forced to read things like the Iliad and the Odyssey, and I have no problem with those things. There's nothing wrong with fiction and stuff like that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying for 9 out of 10 people, they don't care about that at all, and rightly so. It's because that's not what is going to get you farther. Therefore, reading, which, if you read books like these, I guarantee you, at least 1 or 2 of this stack right here that I've got, you would find actually fascinating if you gave it a chance. But you have, what? Learned to be helpless because that's what you were taught. You learned to be helpless because that's what you were taught. Okay? They taught you that, oh, reading is boring. It sucks. It doesn't do anything for me. Yeah, no shit, because the stuff that you were reading about and forced to read and do book reports on and whatever weren't things that could actually get you the things you want. Think about it. What are the things that you want? You probably want to have more money in your bank account. You probably want to be doing a little bit better every year. Everybody acts like they don't want to be rich, or they don't want to be well off, or they don't a little bit envy the kind of people that can finance those lifestyles in good faith. That means not just putting it on a credit card and taking 3 or 4 months of paying it off. That means not buying a $50,000 car and that thing becoming your worst nightmare every single month that you have to pay for it. No, people with true money can pay for those things several times over and not on credit. Like, don't act like you don't want some things like that. And you might not want the car and the house and the shoes and necessarily those things, but I guarantee it, there are causes that you care about. Whether they're philanthropic, whether they're, like, I'm wearing my Humane Society shirt right now. I guess this is very appropriate, right? Whether you care about animals, you don't have to give a shit about animals. Maybe you care about curing diseases. Maybe you care about your mother and father and taking care of them, or maybe your grandma or something. There's somebody in your life, unless you're some sort of sociopath, that you care about, and that having more money would be a benefit to you both, or some cause. Like I'm saying, it doesn't have to be material stuff. Most people, though, it's a blend. There's some causes like this, there are some that they care about. There are some family members or friends that they would like to help when they're able to. There are some nice cars or shoes or, I don't know, electronics or vacations, getting to go to, I don't know, somewhere nice like Hawaii or Cancun or something like that. experiences, right, that they care about. Maybe you want to take up tennis or golf or something like that, which, hey, if you had a bit more money, wouldn't that be easier? Yeah. So most people are a blend. The issue is you've learned to be helpless because you've learned that, hey, books suck. Reading sucks. It's boring. It's hard. And stuff that is hard isn't good. You know why? Because geometry was hard. Because reading these super old-fashioned stories and poems in English class was hard. And then they made it worse that you had to read it out loud in front of all your friends and people making fun of you and stuff. Maybe. And that just reinforces that belief that, man, hard stuff sucks. Right? Yeah, hard stuff does suck, but if you do the right hard stuff, it's also good. So that's learned helplessness. The school system is an example of that. Basically, this is the example. Whether people are directly aware of this or not, what the school system basically says, hey, good life over here, here's where you are. In order to get you from here to here, it's through us only that you're going to do that. Just if we say so or not. And we're going to say so if you know the volume of a cone or whatever. Insert your useless piece of information here. Not that the volume of a cone is useless. Of course it's not useless. It needs to be useful for you. 9 out of 10 people are not going to use that ever. If you're an engineer, or if you're, I don't know, even if you're some sort of sculptor, or some types of artists can use that for sure. That's great. We want some people to know the volume of a cone. It's just that, hey, we don't want to use that as a blanket, like a blanket material that needs to be learned, or blanket subject that everybody needs to be learned. You guys, you probably know what I'm talking about. I don't have to explain it anymore, but that is learned helplessness. That's what we have been conditioned to kind of go about. And also the fact that, hey, if you're not, here's another one, this is especially true in the modern day, when we, in an age of 20-something millionaires, and there are even some people who have either sold or taken in revenue of $1 billion in their 20s, sometimes early 20s. Think about like Mark Zuckerberg, or the people who started WhatsApp, or all of these things that just pop up, and you're like, man, I'm 25, I'm 30, I'm 35, or whatever, and you're like, I haven't done anything near that. And so unfortunately, another learned helplessness topic, I guess you could say, that is prevalent, especially today with how mass media is that you either become successful early and wildly, or not at all. There is unfortunately a stigma that, hey, success comes easily and quickly and early and big, or it doesn't come at all. So if you're not an early success, I have a book that, it's not in this particular stack here, but it's called Late Bloomers. I believe it's by Rich Karlgaard. And that book basically talks about, hey, there are some people that are late bloomers, dude. You're not going to, everybody, like, humans aren't cookie cutter like carbon copies of each other. Like, some people are going to mature at later dates. Like, their cognitive capacities are going to mature at later dates. The average adult isn't really an adult until their late 20s, sometimes early 30s, because your brain just simply has not finished making itself. It's not done. So you don't have all the executive functioning that at 18 you're supposed to have. You're an adult. You can do whatever. You can go and buy this or that, or you can join the military and fight and die or kill people for your country. I'm not saying any of that's right or wrong, but do you see how, if that is the case with a brain that is not fully developed, how easy it is to be led into one kind of thinking or another. That's why a lot of people get so much PTSD. Their brain isn't even damn developed, and they have to see and do things that no person should ever have to see and do at such an early age. That's why childhood traumas are so deep, and they cut so deep, and they're so hard to root out. It's because you're still developing, and now this is stained upon your psyche. It's literally a part of your brain, part of the building blocks. This stain that has been created upon your brain because it's still developing, and now it's like, okay, now we're going to use this trauma as part of the building blocks. So that by the time you're 30, 35, 40, it's in there, and it's so hard to get out. That's part of learned helplessness too. It's like, hey, this one thing happened to me that was traumatic. It might not even have been something that damn bad. You could be, I don't know, you could have been walking down the street and somebody, you're probably in school, let's say you're walking down a hallway and you're wearing a blue shirt like this or whatever, and some other kid for some reason doesn't like that specific shirt, and not necessarily trying to hurt your feelings. They're like, man, blue sucks, I hate blue or something. And that, for some people, it might sound crazy, but for some people that's triggering. I mean, that is deep, because they internalize it as I suck, not blue shirts suck. You see what I'm saying? And then you start learning that helplessness from there. All right? Learned helplessness. It's a huge thing. So in late bloomers, they Rich Karlgaard talks about this too, is that, hey, the issue, especially today, is, and the school systems are very guilty of this, is you become a success early and quickly and wildly successful. Like I said, early and quickly, or not at all. So people, even in school, even in people that are 16, 17, 18, even in K through 12, are getting this ingrained in them, and they're seeing all these people on the A honor roll, all these really successful people playing sports, or getting these scholarships, or getting like offers from schools. They're unsolicited offers from all these colleges want them and stuff, and they see that and they're like, dang, I'm not there yet. And then maybe they would have been there, give it 6 more months, or maybe just 12 more months or something, but now they're starting to think that, dang, I'm not already successful, because success comes early and it comes quickly too when it does start coming, or it doesn't come at all. So therefore, it doesn't come at all. I'm not good, I'm not successful, I'm not going to do good at school, why should I even bother? Learned helplessness. And this is a huge issue, because a lot of people are late bloomers. They don't have all of those cognitive capacities. There is plenty of research about how all humans do not have a fully developed brain at 18. For most of us, it takes until maybe 25 or so, maybe 30, but there are some people that it takes even longer. Just their physiology is based around that. It's just what is. It just takes longer. They're late bloomers, and unfortunately, the later bloomer that you are, the more time that you have to internalize all of these negative influences, and you learn helplessness. They did a study. I'm gonna try to get this study right, that because I might get a couple of the details wrong, but basically it was like this. I think it was either Martin Seligman or somebody in that sphere that did this study, but they took dogs or something like that, and they had them in a cage or some kind of box that was too high for them to jump out of, and every time they would try, it would shock them or something like that. And they're like, okay, well, it's too high anyways, let's and we're getting these shocks every time we try to like climb up on it and try to jump out. And they kept doing that to them, and they lowered the fencing of the cage or the container or whatever it was. It was something like this. And they lowered it until it was so low, the dog just standing up could like put their head over it. It was so low, they could just step over it. They don't have to jump, right? But they still were too afraid to try to get out of that specific enclosure, because they had learned the helplessness. They had learned that dude, no matter what I do, I'm not going to be able to get out of this, so I didn't even try. It sounds silly, but that happens with people all the time. You ever see a person who is like, well, yeah, I could go and do this as my job, like switch careers, but, well, it's kind of risky. I might need to learn a new skill. I haven't ever found huge success to begin with. What's to say that this is going to be better, and on and on and on. And you probably know somebody like that. You're like, dude, why don't you try that other thing? You would be great at it. Okay? And even if you weren't, you probably could get better at it and you would be happier. And there is a higher ceiling that you could you ever see people who plateau in whatever they're doing? They've been doing the same job for the past 5 years, 10 years, 20 years sometimes, and they don't have any more responsibility than they did a few years ago. Or any of that. They've plateaued. There's no higher that they can go, yet they stick with it and are unhappy. If you stick with it and you're happy, yeah, whatever. But if you're unhappy and you stick with it, you gotta transition to something that has a little bit more of a ceiling, so you're learning more every day. You ever meet those people? You might be one of them. A lot of us are at certain points. You know why? Because of learned helplessness. Now, I know I have ignored a little bit of the kind of the titling of this video is the breaking the family curse or the generational curse. And all that means is that a lot of this comes from your family. Like, they did this to you. They didn't mean to, right? Nobody is like, dude, I'm going to keep my kids small and no motivation and no courage or whatever. Nobody says that. Okay, what kind of person says that? But they accidentally do it to you because they don't know. They have learned that helplessness too, and they're like, okay, well, I'm still alive. This, at least we know, works to keep somebody alive and working in the real world. So this is what I'm going to teach. And on it goes, passed down through the generations, through your family. You break the family curse when you're like, wait a minute, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to play that script anymore. Isn't that an encouraging notion, an encouraging thought that you're breaking the family curse? That's a big deal, man. All of your ancestors looking down on you or whatever are gonna be like, yeah, this dude, he finally did it, or this girl, or whoever it is, broke the family curse. They're like, yeah, man, they got it, finally, is what they're gonna be saying. To get out of the learned helplessness. Now, there are ways to get out of it. Of course, you want to, question the ideals you have, that ingrained learned helplessness. You got to question it. The ideals you have that you're currently living by, how are they serving you? No, really think about it. Your brain thinks that it has gone through these thoughts, but it really hasn't. It's just, it's a little it's like a fallacy. It thinks it has, just because it's programmed to think that, but it actually hasn't. If you really think about, okay, money is the root of all evil, and think about that. Is it just because people who have money, there have been some that sucked, that were shitty people? Of course there have. Have there been good people that have money? Of course there have. There you go. So now, it's not necessarily all true. You can do that with anything. I have a video that talks about this situation. Actually, this is one of the ways that you get out of this learned helplessness, is that the video is called something like having a belief requires the courage to challenge it. And what that means is, yeah, have your beliefs for sure, but always be challenging them. Especially when you're creating them. Always be challenging them. Look at the opposing opinions, the opposing evidence even. Go hang out with the people that believe the opposite thing, or look up evidence to the contrary. This is great. If you ever watch people who do debates, right? And I'm not talking necessarily about politicians. I'm talking about like in high school or in college or stuff like that. People who are on these debate teams, they're very interesting because a lot of times they'll be given a subject and they're asked to argue the position that they don't actually believe in. Let's take, for example, like, we should give more federal, the federal government should subsidize schools more or give more money to schools. So there's people that say yes, and there are people that say no. And no matter which side of that you're on, one day, if you watch debates, you're going to, or the person in the debate is going to be assigned to argue the point they don't believe in. Maybe they believe that schools need more funding, but they are assigned to argue no. You have to argue and find all the reasons why schools should not get more funding. This is a very powerful exercise, and it takes a very mature person to be able to do it. And it's going to be hard at first because your brain helps you learn helplessness by being like, oh, it's comfortable staying in your own opinion all the time. Right? That's easy. All the YouTube channels that you follow usually are based around your opinion. All the politics you follow or religion or whatever it is, or the friends that you have generally carry your same opinion. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but sometimes you're going to have to challenge those beliefs and really study the people who have the opposite ones. Why do they have those? What kinds of good ideas do they have? Because I guarantee you it's some. Because here's another thing, if a belief was the end all be all and the gospel, it wouldn't be called a belief. It would be called a fact or a truth. And because it's not, that means there are correct ideas, or at least beneficial ideas, on multiple sides of the belief. Not just on two sides, there could be 10 sides. And studying and even researching and trying to disprove your own belief, at least in some ways, will it'll help you reinforce the weaknesses in your belief, because all beliefs do have their own weaknesses, right? Their own blind spots. And a lot of the times the competing ideas have the components for you to shore up those weaknesses. This is how you get out of learned helplessness. Think about it. You might be like, oh, I am overweight or something, and I'm never going to get out of this because my mama was overweight, my daddy was overweight, their mamas and daddies, and just on and on it goes, right? Okay. There's other things too, like, oh, that cake is just so good. Oh, the McDonald's is so good. Or, oh, soda and ice cream or whatever it is just so good. And I can't get away from it. I can't, resist it. Those, though, right there, that's learned helplessness. The I can'ts and oh, my family this, and yeah, there's such a thing as genetics. Yes, that doesn't mean you can't do it. Find the ways that you can. Find the other people too. There are other people just like you with the same situation, with the same I don't know, you could say build. If any of y'all play video games, you got different kinds of builds in these RPGs, right? Like a strength build or a dexterity build or a magic build or something. Well, hey, if you're overweight, maybe you got that bulkier person build. But go find the other people that started with that build and they got out of it. Because I guarantee you it's probably not as hard as you think. The hard part is the thinking of it. It's like, because the learned helplessness makes it something that you learned. You gotta do what Master Yoda says in The Empire Strikes Back. He told Luke, dude, you gotta unlearn what you learned, because that's not helping you. That's the test. You know, when he was trying to pull his spaceship out of the swamp. And he's like, I can't do it, dude. It's too big. It's just, I can't. And Yoda is like, okay. And he pulls it out with no problem. Right? You guys probably know what I'm talking about. If not, you'll get what I'm saying. It's like, Yoda is much smaller and seems less significant than Luke. And he pulls it out no problem. And he's basically saying, like, he says something to the effect of, with you, I'm always hearing, what can't be done. I can't do this, I can't do that, it's too much, it's too big, or whatever. He's like, you need to unlearn that, okay? You need to start asking, how can I do this? Right? That's that learned helplessness. And that's how we untangle it. Now, there is such a thing that is called the commitment consistency bias, or what do you call that? Commitment consistency, like a tendency, even. It's one of these like cognitive biases people in psychology talk about sometimes. And basically what commitment consistency is the more you commit to something over, like, with greater frequency, meaning more times, and the more intensely you do it, and over a longer duration, the more of each of those things you do something, the easier it is to just keep doing it. Commitment consistency. So the more that you hear when you're a kid, or, I mean, this happens to adults too, don't get me wrong, but it's generally a little easier for new things that come now for us to resist them than when we were more impressionable as children. But, like, the more you are told something, so let's talk about school. You go into school, every single day of school that you have since kindergarten, basically, they're like, hey, get good grades by doing your homework, by studying, and there's nothing wrong with homework and studying. Dude, everyone's got to do homework. These books here are my homework. I mean, you got to do that. Or with whatever you're trying to do in life. If you're trying to be great at basketball, you need to be practicing basketball a couple hours every day, or every other day, or whatever it is. That's your homework, man. That's your reps. Go through those reps and those sets, and you just do it over and over and over. Commitment consistency, and it gets better and it gets easier. But the problem is, back in school, we were hearing the do your homework, do the grades, read, I don't know, these stories that are not going to be of any use to you when you grow up, or learn these formulas, these mathematic formulas or whatever, that aren't going to be what they should have been teaching us, is like things like simple interest or compounding interest and stuff. Those things aren't that hard. If we got 4 years of the way APR or APY or any of these things are actually working, do you think you could get it in 4 years? Yeah, it might. If you don't know how to do it now, it might sound hard, like, oh, I don't want to learn a new formula. But what if they taught you that over 4 years and been like, hey man, everybody here, instead of buying school supplies like a protractor and all these different folders and a TI-84 calculator, or those things that you are never going to use, most of us, how about you take that $100, $200, $300 it would have cost you for all them school supplies, and we're going to put it in an interest-bearing account, and I'm going to teach you how at the end of the year you'll have a little bit of money extra. You don't even have to touch the $100, $200, $300. You're going to have a little bit of money extra to do a little something with. And that is how we're going to teach you math that works in the real world. Imagine that. Could y'all imagine if that's what we did, instead of buying rulers and protractors and, I don't know, pencil sharpeners and all of these things that you guys know, the back to school section, right? You know, all the stuff that's in it. Book bags for having a bunch of books. Maybe that's not a thing anymore with how digital everything is, but you see what I'm saying? Those books shouldn't have had a geometry book in it and one on, I don't know, older style writing and these different things. Most of it, okay, there's a place for it. Most of it, when you're teaching a new mind things they're going to use on a daily basis didn't matter. And look how much money was put towards that. Imagine if you're like, okay, we don't need all of that. We're teaching you, take that money and we're going to show you how to put it in an interest-bearing account so that by the time the year is over, or by the time middle school is over, or high school, guess how much money you have made. And it becomes addictive. Commitment consistency. Once you start seeing them, those rewards, you're like, yeah, of course I'm going to do that. All right, of course I'm not gonna hate books. Just read the right ones. I guarantee you, people like movies and stuff. Yeah, because you're watching the right ones that are interesting to you. I guarantee you, I can find a bunch of movies that you're gonna hate. It'll be like reading a book. Okay, especially if it's in some other language or something that you don't understand what's going on because you can't relate. And if you watch something on some very high concept, like, I don't know, science. So this is stuff that's real, right? Like, oh, okay, this is how black holes work and this and that, or quantum mechanics or physics or something. And they're speaking about all of these things that you have nothing to compare it to. You'll be bored and you'll say, I hate this, basically. So this is where that commitment consistency came in, because every day since you started school, it's do these things, like that scarcity bias, do these things or we're not going to say you can have a good life. And that has been learned. Like, man, I'm doing all the geometry, I'm studying so hard, I'm just not really getting it. You know why you're not getting it? It's because there's no practical application. Like, the brain kind of learns by making relations. Like, how is this useful to what's going on? Or how does this, like, compare to what I already know? I believe I read somewhere that the reason why the brain needs to make relations and compare things to things it's already seen is because when humans are, and this is for most animals, but for humans, right, when they're, or at least most mammals, but when humans are babies, they see their mom, and they start to be like, okay, that's my mother, right? They're new, they don't have any language, they don't have any thoughts or impressions or anything else, they don't have any of this learned helplessness. All they know is like, okay, that's my mom. But every time they see her like from a different angle. They're being held, or they're in their crib, or they're in a stroller, I don't know, right? They see her from a different angle, and it's important to be able to take all those different pictures and snapshots and put them together as one thing and being like, oh, that is all of mom, right? The brain works with relations like that. When you introduce a completely new concept that has nothing to do with something that you've been doing before, it doesn't fit well into that kind of model. All right. So, anyways, this is about breaking the family curse. This is a bit of a longer one, but there's a lot of very important information to discuss about this topic, because when you start seeing, like, okay, why do I have this belief that I'll never be good at saving money? I'll never pay off my debt. I'll never not live paycheck to paycheck. That's a big one, because this is what happens. Then you kind of think to yourself, you're like, well, mom lived paycheck to paycheck and she's still all right. Or dad did. Or my grandparents did. Or all of my friends are doing that. That's another big one. You see, they say you're the average of the 5 closest people that you keep around you, whether that's friends, family, or whoever, and that average can be money, the average can be your cognitive ability, or your beliefs, that's another big one, or here's a big one, your ability to get out of learned helplessness. If everyone else around you is operating with learned helplessness, it seems like the right thing, because you'd be like, well, it wouldn't be around me if it wasn't working out. Because it works. Learned helplessness works. Generally speaking, you're going to survive, but you won't be thriving. You won't be doing those other things that you want to do. You want to be a person that's like, okay, I don't want to live paycheck to paycheck forever. So you have to challenge that belief. You have to unlearn what you've learned. You got to break that family curse. How nice will it be to feel like, man, out of everybody, I'm the first one to break the family curse of poverty, or the family curse of like a lot of relationships that have just fallen apart. That's just how it is, you know. Men suck, women suck, marriage sucks, or whatever, right? Depending on who you are, you'll have a different like idea. How nice will it be to finally break that tradition, that family or generational curse, by getting out of the learned helplessness? It seems like a beautiful thought to me. All right. This sector of positive psychology is something that, I mean, obviously still is being researched all the time, and it's really important to like get into your own mind and see. It's not even into your own mind. It's actually better to be outside of it as an observer. Be like, well, just observe where your thoughts go when something happens, and you're like, oh, of course that happened because of X, Y, and Z, or whatever. And whatever it is that you actually want to happen, you'll be like, okay, why didn't this happen this way? Like, truly. Remember, like I said before, your brain thinks that it has gone through this before, and usually it has not. Almost never, actually, has it really gone through this. Like, what is the evidence that I'm going to be paycheck to paycheck the rest of my life? What is the evidence that that has to be the way that it is? If it's, oh, because that's how my parents were, that's a shitty excuse right there. Now, this isn't a value judgment on anyone who believes that, because it's hard to find out that you even believe that unless you stop everything and become that observer. You don't want to be too myopic when it comes to this. You don't want to be too, that's nearsightedness, I believe, is what that is. A person with this myopic kind of view on it would be like, okay, well, I'm nearsighted. Everybody around me is paycheck to paycheck, and all of my family was, okay, that's all there is. No. You have to look for the evidence for the ways to get out of that. And like I said, this isn't just about money. This is about anything. It's just, we all interact with money pretty much. You could have some very obscure, like, situation that this can apply to. All of us do have our own personalized situations that don't necessarily resonate with the masses, but they will with a lot of people. Remember, there's like, what is there, 8 billion people in the world right now at the time of this recording? That's a lot of damn people. Okay, so 8 billion people, if just like, what, 8 million people in the world were like you, that's still a lot, man. That's what, 1,000? 1 out of 1,000 people? I don't know, but the math might be failing me. You see, I've been talking about math here, and it's but it's something like that, right? 1 million is like 1 part of 1,000 parts, or something of a billion, or whatever it is. You could look it up, but you see what I'm saying. Out of 8 billion people, if only 1 million is significantly smaller than a billion, or 8 million is significantly smaller than 8 billion. Okay, but then you think that, wait a minute, but 8 million people, that's still a lot of damn people. 8 million people, 8 million other people have had the same kind of nuanced experience with whatever it is I'm talking about. For you, whatever it is. We all deal with money, but you might have, I don't know, you might have some sort of like, maybe you dress hair or something, and you're like, man, I can never like grow my business bigger because I can't find the money, or I can't find the other hairstylist to join this salon, or I don't know what it is. I guarantee you about 8 million other people in the world have that problem, or very similar ones. They might not be 8 million hairstylists that are successful entrepreneurs, but I bet you there's 8 million people that want to be, but they are having issues. Now you're like, 8 million, that sounds like a lot. There's no way. I'm like, but remember, that's 1 out of 1,000. So out of 1,000 people that you meet, one person is going to have the same kind of issue as you. They're like, man, I love hair too. It's probably more than that. It's probably like 1 out of 100. Think about it. You probably have plenty of friends or something that you either went to school with or that have the same interest. But what I'm saying, even if it's 1 out of 1,000, that's still actually a lot of people. There's camaraderie in that. Then you study that. Okay, who are the people that made it? With my unique issue that I want to apply this method of unlearning that learned helplessness with. And you just study them. Okay? Here's a good one. Okay? If you're a woman and think that, man, I'm never going to find success, or it's such a man's world, and I'm not saying there's not a correctness to some of that. There is. Life's unfair, okay? So for men, they have their own problem. Women, white people, black people, Asian people, everybody has their own sets of problems, their own strengths and weaknesses. It's like what I was saying before. It's like having your character build in an RPG. If you're good at magic, you're probably not going to be good at swinging a sword or using heavy armor or whatever it is. Okay? It's just how your cards came out. It's the hands you were dealt. So, but like with any of those things, let's say you're a woman and you're like, man, I'm never going to find success. Think of the successful people. Like, there are some wildly, wildly successful women out there. Like Oprah is a billionaire. A lot of people forget about that. Okay? Sarah Blakely is a billionaire. A lot of people, if you don't know her story, read it. She came up with Spanx, the clothes, right? Beyonce she might not be a billionaire, she might be, but the amount of influence that Beyonce has is probably worth $1 billion or multi-billions of dollars, especially with a little bit more time. Who knows how big she will get? But think about those things. You got to unlearn what you learned. Don't do any of this, oh, I'm a woman, it's not going to work for me. Dude, there's some women out there that are rocking for sure. If you're a certain race, if you're from a certain country, or it doesn't matter, you can find people and emulate them, use them as inspiration to unlearn that learned helplessness. This is how you break that family curse. Alright, so I'm going to end this one here because it's a bit long. But remember, we're here breaking the family curse, the generational curse here. Learned helplessness. We are unlearning the learned helplessness so that we can get somewhere. And then the people that we teach, you will become an inspiration for other people. And that is an encouraging thought. Just like I broke the family curse is an encouraging thought, and all of your ancestors are looking at you, man, like, we're damn proud of that. Of that one. Because finally somebody got it. Finally somebody understood that it doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to keep running the same scripts. Alright, so thank y'all so much for being here for this one. No, it was long, but thank you for sticking it out, and have a beautiful day.